So I did something pretty cool the other day, and to be honest, I'm pretty proud of it. I was actually able to get all 10 perks. So I got 10 exfil streaks with doing contracts solo. I did this all solo. So I'm at 10 streaks. And to be honest, I am technically at 12. But you know what? There was a bug, and we need to talk about some of these bugs that I've learned. Now that I've done it, there's a lot of advice I want to give to everyone. And also by talking to you about the contracts that I did during this whole thing, my gun build that I used, everything. I'm just going to break down how I was able to get to this. And you know what? It wasn't an easy task. I will tell you that. The first thing I definitely want to show you is my loadout, what I'd go in with most raids, or at least what I started with, because it does kind of change. So once I did get, you know, the armor vest and the bigger backpack, right away I use my insured weapon. So the most important thing I can tell you right away is you're not going to use your insured weapon until you get at least a self revive or a revive pistol, and you get at least a level 2 armor. So you want to use whatever you have lying around for the first raid or two until you start, you know, you can snowball. So once I was able to get a better armor carrier, better backpack, doesn't really matter that much, but a better backpack and at least one self revive or a revive pistol, that's when I would use my gun. And the one I used actually was the TAC 56. I'll show you the build at the end of this video. I don't want to go too much in depth on it right now because it's not super fun to talk about a gun build. I think it's overdone, and probably, you know, the TAC 56 gun build I'm going to be showing you anyways. My secondary actually was the Fennec. I don't know what it is. I just had a basic bare bones Fennec. I think it's a great gun even with no attachments. And to be honest, it came in handy when I had a bunch of, you know, AI in front of me. I wanted to swap for sure. Like that was one of the things, like I would want to swap instead of reloading, and just to kill maybe 1 or 2 guys that were left over, right? So having some sort of secondary gun in case you run out of ammo on your primary, or you just need to kill the last AI or 2 before you can reload, it just helps a lot. The other thing I'd used was actually a spotter scope. This is unusual for me, I'll tell you that right now. Usually when I play, I go with the stims, but I kind of went, I would say, like I kind of realized something, right? Is the spotter scope you don't usually find out in the wild too much, yet the stims you're gonna find a ton of. So what I always did while I was playing actually was I would use the spotter scope, and then once I find stims, I equip those instead of the spotter scope. And then when I wanted to use the spotter scope, I just swap them out. Stims are so useful, and they're just lying around everywhere, especially when I would go loot hospitals a lot. So spotter scope saved me a ton, and you really do need it. And then also stims saved me a ton, and you really do need them. But if you have to choose one to go in with, because you can't just have stims in your backpack to start around, I always started with a spotter scope because, again, you can find stims everywhere. Semtex, I never changed this. I don't know what it is. The Semtex I just love, you know, especially if you do come up against Riot Shield AI, say like at the beginning of this whole start, I would go through the Riot Shield AIs because I was trying to snowball. So it meant I was trying to go to some really hairy spots, right? And they just help. Plus, if you do end up getting a bunch of reinforcements with a helicopter, you just throw these and they stick to the ground right where you throw them. And if you have good aim, you know, you're a Babe Ruther, you know, you're going to kill every reinforcement before they even can shoot at you. Obviously, the munitions box is so handy. But remember, if I did have a self revive pistol here, I'm never changing it. Always a self revive pistol. And then if I use that up, I didn't have anything, munitions box is always my go-to. So this wasn't the only time I tried this on stream. I did do this all in one Twitch stream, but the day before and the day before this one, I did try to do it. And on one stream I got to 5, I think that was my highest, and then I disconnected. And then the next day I did it again, I got to 6, and a 3-man squad rolled up on me and just got me, right? It just happens. But with doing all this, I really do feel like I've learned what contracts you should be going after as a solo player, so you can accomplish this on your own too. So for this challenge, I did 3 secure intels, and I feel like this is going to be your bread and butter. Like this is going to be the one that you do the most contract wise, only because it's pretty straightforward and it doesn't usually put you in too much danger. What I will tell you though is don't be afraid to just kibosh this whole contract if the computer that you need to get the hard drive out of is actually in a really intense AI zone. So sometimes that happens where it might put the computer near the caves or the observatory, somewhere where you know you're going to get swarmed by a ton of AI, and it's really not worth it as a solo player to just go and try to get it done, right? There's other secure intels out there, and you don't want to just waste this whole streak on a maybe you'll get it, maybe, you know, like it's not worth it. Now, I did 3 secure intels. The next one I did was actually 3 secure nuclear materials. This is another amazing one to do because A, you don't need to usually fight too much AI while doing this, and B, it gives you a lot of money in the end. And you will want a lot of money because the most important thing actually is to be buying plates. Once you get into a groove of your current raid, the first thing you're going to want to do, because you probably have at least a self revive, is you are going to want to buy a lot of plates. After you buy a lot of plates, you're going to make sure you can get another self revive, but you're going to be going through plates like crazy. So that's something really important to always have on hand. And secured nuclear materials just gives you a ton of money, not only from the item you pick up, but from doing the contract itself. So this is always a banger to do, and I did this 3 times. The last one is eliminate the high value target. So I did this actually 4 times out of my 10 run, and I wasn't even meaning to do it, but I'll explain why in a second here. But I did do eliminate HVT 4 times. It is something that isn't too difficult because again, you're just going after AI and you really only need to kill one certain AI, but you are going to need to go after their body. You can't do it from afar, remember that. But it just popped up a lot and it was near me. So if I were you, I wouldn't always pick eliminate HVT as my first contract, but the reason I did do it so often was because of where I spawned. So this is something you guys need to know about, right? Is when I first spawned, I'd always look at the contracts I had around me, and out of these 3, what was my closest contract? Because you don't want to push too much into other points of interest because the chances of there being another spawn point there is pretty high. So when you first spawn into the DMZ, the first thing I would always do is bring up the map. What contract are we going to go do? What's our game plan? And that was so important, is figuring out a game plan, not just step 1, but after we do this, where do we go extract? Like, you want to figure out every little step-by-step thing you needed to do, because you don't want to just be left in like, okay, now what? You always wanted to have some sort of idea of what you were doing. And the biggest thing that I wanted to make sure I was doing was not stepping on other squad's toes right when I spawned in. This is so important too. You have to realize that you're probably surrounded by other spawn points. So the more you push to the left or to the right on the outside of the map, you're going to run into more squads. But the more you go into the center of the map, the less chance you're going to get, if that makes sense. I think it makes sense to me. I don't know. But yeah, the more you go left or right from your spawn and you stay to those outsides, the more you're going to be running into other squads trying to, you know, maybe get some armor or some money. And then the more you just push into the center, you're going to come across probably less squads at least. So just keep that in mind when you are picking contracts, eh? When it comes to vehicles in the DMZ, there's ones you want to be looking for right away when you need to get in a vehicle. And then there's some that you're just like, well, it's here, I might as well just roll the dice, right? So the ones you're looking for right away are definitely your LTVs and your armored trucks. These are going to be awesome for you. They do have a lot of protection on them, and not only against AI, but definitely against even players. Now, if you need a vehicle and there's not those 2 around, I would recommend a cargo truck. They're not too bad. You know, you can do what you can with them, and they're still, you know, they have a little bit of armor to them. But then I would say then there's everything else, right? So, you know, your chop top, your OJ truck, your mountain climber, stuff like that. Those vehicles, don't get me wrong, they're fast, they're definitely okay, but you can easily get sniped in them. So when it comes to vehicles, you have to remember that there is a huge downside when using them, right? Because you get shown on the map to other players quite easily. So you want to make sure that if you are going to go into an area where maybe your quest is, or maybe where The extract is you might want to jump out a little early and just take a peek around, right? You just want to take a look around first. But if you are in that armored truck or in that LTV, like I said, make sure you're using these to your advantage after you do call in the Gina 4, right? So after you call in Gina 4, which is if you don't know what the airplane's name is when it comes to grab you, make sure you're running around with it, right? Not only can you run over AI, but you have protection with the LTV and the armored truck that if there are players that are going to come up and try to get you, you can just scoot away and know that you have to go to somewhere else and now you're already on your way. I just did this a lot when I was doing this 10 streak, and it came in handy so many times. There are some other tips I want to make sure that I touch base with you about, and that you should know about if you are going to try to do this, and just as a solo player in general. The biggest tip I can tell you is do not trust anyone. Don't trust anyone until you see that invite to another squad. If you have a really weird feeling about joining another squad, or maybe they're being a little too weird and you're like, I think once I show myself they're going to kill me, the chances are they're probably going to kill you. Listen, this game is PvP and PvE. It's not about making friends as much as we all like making friends. Like, I love just squatting up. As much as we love doing that, maybe not everyone does. They're out for blood, right? So don't trust anyone, but you know what? If you are going to, make sure you get that invite, or you send that invite and they accept it before you show yourself in the flesh, right? Tip number 2 is definitely something that is really important, but not everyone can do it. It's very difficult a lot of times because, let's be honest, it's just not sexy. Playing passively or just, extracting right away isn't always the worst thing to do, right? So first things first, play passively, right? As a solo player, unless you don't care about your streak, unless you don't care about your loadout really, or you're just out for blood, hey, give her. But just know, more times than not, it's going to be a 3v1 and you probably will die, right? Unless you're a really good player, or you do have, I would say, an advantage, maybe the high ground, or maybe you caught them off guard. Okay, definitely do it. But if you're trying to get this 10 perk streak, you have to play passively. You definitely have to play passively. And the other thing, I know you guys might hate this, is if you spawn in, you look at the map and you're like, you know what? Just got a bad feeling. You're near an extract, maybe you spawned in next to Gina 4 and you're like, you know what? I'm just going to get out of here. Get out. What? There's no harm. There's no downside to just leaving, right? Like there's no downside. So if you want to leave right away, leave, but just always play a little more careful as a solo player, just a little bit. Okay, so here's the gun that I was using. It's the TAC 56. I would say the meta build for the TAC 56 that everyone's been using. And if you haven't seen the stats on it, or you don't know the build, let me quickly show you it. So first things first, we got the 17.5 Tundra Pro barrel. Now to tune that, here's what I tuned it at. There you go. Next up is the Echoless 80, and this is going to be tuned at right here. I'm not going to go too much into it. I'm just kind of showing you, and then you can pause as we go. Next, we're going to need the FTAC Ripper. Here it is. We're going to be tuning it right here. Next up is the 60 round magazine. You don't really need anything for that, right? It's just going to be the 60 round mag. And then last but not least is the Aimpoint OP V4, and here's the tuning. There you go. That's it. That's what you're going to be doing. I didn't want to do too much into this right now. I feel like you can just pause it whenever you want. And there's the gun. The video definitely is going a little too long already, and I'm sorry. I just wanted to talk about this whole experience. And to be honest, I'm really proud. Getting 10 perks as a solo player, I'm friggin' proud about it. I'm going to tell you that. And I ducked a disconnect. A lot of times you're not going to get 10 raids in a row without a disconnect. So I ducked that. Pretty proud. So in the comments down below, I always say that the only 30 to 35% of you guys even get here. If you are one of the 30 to 35%, I want to hear, have you been ducking disconnects lately, or have you been disconnected a lot? Lately, it's been actually pretty good for me, but I want to hear how the disconnects have been going on your end. So thank you guys so much. Again, like always, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit the bell button to get notified. It's free for you guys. It does mean the world to me. We're on our way to 100,000 subscribers. And until next time, I'll just talk to everyone else later.